All right. Thanks for attending my session. I really appreciate it. I know Thursday is always wrapping up the conference. Everybody enjoyed last night, hopefully. I enjoyed it a little bit less because I'm presenting today. So let's see. I have built my entire presentation in Tableau, so I'm going to have to come up to the computer once in a while to tab through the different dashboards. But my name is Brandy Beals, and that's me right there with all of my friends. Olga is not in it, but this is Olga. She's part of the Milwaukee Tableau user group, which we help to lead. And so I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. These are all my, well, not all of my friends. I have more friends than this. But these are some of my friends from the Austin conference 2 years ago. And when I was preparing this presentation, I don't know if anybody else has to do this, but I had to send my presentation to our compliance team to get approval. And they actually had no problem with anything I was presenting. So that was really hurdle one accomplished. It was really good. But they did have one issue, and it was actually with this photo. Because they were like, well, there's other people in the photo, and we don't really know if you can use it because other people are in it. And so I was like, well, what do I have to do? I know all of them. I could probably get them to approve it. And so they're like, well, let me talk to legal, which is always what you want to hear, right? And so they talked to legal. Sorry. Just going to take that off. And they talked to legal. And legal said that the presentation was fine, and I could use the photo as long as I tell you this. The views and opinions expressed throughout this presentation and in the accompanying materials are my own. They do not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, policies, or practices of my employer, Artisan Partners Limited Partnership, its affiliates, partners, directors, officers, or my fellow colleagues. All right, thank you, yes. So, now that we have that fun stuff out of the way, I'm going to be speaking about our training, security, and governance. Oh my, not my choice of title, but I'm not clever enough, so they came up with something for me. And so I'm going to kind of go through, this is our agenda. I'm going to talk about our training. So we have a large group of self-service Tableau Desktop users, so I'm going to kind of talk about how that's been a success for us. And then once you kind of have this army of Tableau developers, how do you kind of provide some guardrails so that they work within certain I don't know, just certain guidelines, making sure that they're sharing the data with the right folks. And then how do we provide transparency to either the other IT teams that we work with, other areas within the business, and then more specifically our data governance team. So I'm going to kind of talk about those three different areas. Now, this image that I have up here, so we have kind of just organically built this at Artisan. And as I was preparing for this presentation, I actually found out that Tableau has a deployment guide. So if you want to kind of build out an enterprise deployment of Tableau, they have a guide that's really helpful. And luckily enough, we actually seem to be doing all the right things that I found out afterwards. But this image actually comes from that deployment guide. I tried to search for it online. It does not exist. Feel free to try, but I've tried. And so I think if you ask your account reps or something, they may be able to slyly hand you the deployment guide. But it's kind of cool because it kind of walks through 14 different steps of how to kind of build out an enterprise deployment. But I think the first step is having self-service Tableau Desktop users. And so we have kind of built over time, over the last few years, a culture of data-driven decision making. And a lot of that has this foundation of training users on Tableau Desktop and Tableau Server. And so the process that we have kind of taken, it's just developed naturally. But when we first brought Tableau in, we worked with our management reporting team to kind of build out our first dashboard, which is our executive summary for our executives, surprisingly enough. And I guess from there, word of mouth has kind of traveled about how awesome Tableau is, right? I think we all know how awesome Tableau is. And so word of mouth has just kind of traveled. And people would reach out to us and request, like, I think Tableau can help me with my problem. And so we would schedule an initial demo with them. And what I like to try and do in that initial demo, in prep for that, is actually get a data set from that person that they want to use. And I spend maybe a half an hour before that demo kind of building a basic dashboard, right? Just like, what can I quickly find in that data that I think might be of value to them? And that's really the wow, because if you can walk into that initial meeting and say, like, here's a dashboard based on your data, and I built it in half an hour, they're like, OK, number one, this meeting's already of value. But then you can kind of show them the features that are baked into Tableau that I think don't exist in a lot of other tools. The ability to kind of like have your different sheets filter one another, filtering and the integration that you can do. You can embed Tableau into like SharePoint or Wiki. The subscriptions, you can subscribe to views if that dashboard's out on Tableau Server. So all of these really kind of like basic native features as part of Tableau. I like to showcase those in this initial meeting. From there, as long as kind of Tableau still seems like a good tool for them, we like to do a hands-on working session where I actually kind of slide that keyboard and mouse over to them and let them build. With my guidance, obviously, because they never probably used Tableau Desktop before. And so they will then just kind of like, maybe they, in this meeting, they say, you know what, I don't really look at it, by team, I look at it by strategy. So maybe I can teach them how to like easily, you just drag strategy and you place it on top of team, and all of a sudden your dashboard is completely different. So giving them that chance to see how easy it is to actually build something in Tableau. After that, if everything still is going well, we'll move on to date number 3, where they will do, I'll send them like an onboarding email. So you shoot them like an email. I have like a basic email template, and it just says like, here's your desktop license, here's how to install it, and then here's a bunch of resources, both like the Tableau online learning, on-demand stuff that's free on their website, any sort of like community stuff, and then internally we have a wiki page, which is actually the image on the right there. It's all internal, and it's kind of like an internal analytics community. One of the resources that we also have is this concept of office hours, which I actually thought was not going to work at all, to be honest. I was like, I'll try it, but not really confident, right? It has turned out amazing. So 1 hour a week, it's like Thursday at 11 a.m. or something, we sit in a conference room, someone from the analytics team, and we just kind of field random questions from folks across the business. And a lot of times, like, we'll have multiple people coming in, and even though the content may not be relevant immediately, like sometimes you don't always maybe know the questions that you want to ask or like what capabilities are, and so hearing other people's questions is really valuable. And so these office hours have really been helpful. In addition, we do workshops, and so we actually, last year, we did workshops once a month, and they were 1 hour long, and they were kind of just a way to continue to educate like our internal users on how to build, whatever features in Tableau. This year, we tried doing them every other week for 20 minutes, which has also, I think, been all right. But I think what actually has been the most valuable within these workshops is actually when other folks from other departments come in and present how they use Tableau. Like, I can talk all day about, like, did you know that you can do, like, level of detail expressions and, table calculations and all sorts of things like that. But if other people can come in and say, this is how we use Tableau and this is how our team is benefiting from that, I think that has been really great for our users. So all of this fun stuff that we, all this content that we kind of have around the firm, we put into our blog, which is kind of on the right-hand side there. And so this is just kind of like a running list if somebody can't make it to a workshop or they want to know how to connect to like Tableau, like using Tableau Mobile. All of that stuff is in that blog. So I've already kind of spoken about the engagement, kind of like having your user base actually lead some of that content. One thing that I want to try and do at the end of the year, and I don't know if I've even talked to my boss about this, but he's right over there, so this might be new to him. But I want to do a competition at the end of the year across like users within our organization, and say like, okay, maybe by the end of the year, who has the most views on all of their stuff, right? I feel like that would be cool, not only from a perspective of like, maybe they don't even know if their stuff is used, and then if it's not used, maybe why it's not used. Like, does their teams just not know about it? And maybe you can teach your teams like how to use mobile or how to subscribe to views, or that this even exists. And so that's something we're going to do later. Surprise. And so when I talk about our self-service, we've really embraced this idea of self-service analytics. And when I talk about that, I wanted to kind of express that in some way. And so, we're kind of a small firm. I think we're hovering around 500 employees. But across those 500 employees, we have 77 desktop users. Or maybe it's 70 right now. I think we have 70 active. And so that percentage is actually 13%. So out of all of our employees, over 13% of them have Tableau Desktop. I think that's an impressive ratio. I don't know, but it seems impressive to me, sample size of 1. And so within that group of users, only 3 of them actually support Tableau and the platform. So 3 of us out of those 70 support the rest of the group. And so that means that just over 4% of those users actually do all of the technical support. In the right-hand side, you can see like our distribution across, so what teams and departments have the most employees, and out of those, like where our Tableau users sit. So we clearly have representation in every department except human capital. So I'm going to meet with them when I get back. And so to give you an idea of some of the kind of like high-level statistics that we have going on at our firm, we have 1 production server and 2 lower environment servers. Currently, we're running on 10.5. And we have 550 server users. So that's kind of like a mix of employees and contractors. And we have a core licensing model for that. So everybody in the firm is licensed on Tableau Server. We utilize Active Directory, which will be important later in this presentation. And I think what's interesting here is I built this view that shows the quarterly or quarter-to-date traffic. And so we're, 25 days through the quarter? Maybe this is last quarter. And so we can see, what days maybe have the most hits in terms of number of views, but only 30 distinct users are actually responsible for that. And then over the course of that entire quarter, almost 18,000 hits and 2,100 emails were actually sent. So this just gives you a little bit of a flavor for what we have on our server and how it's used. Sorry. Okay. So security design. So now that you have this like huge 70 set of self-service creators in Tableau, I kind of want to be able to unleash them on Tableau Server. Go create, share, but securely, right? Be safe about it. So the way that we've designed our security model, this has actually been it's kind of happened, it started organically, and then we've kind of just scaled that up. So we kind of I wanted the business users to define how they wanted to organize their server and what brought value to them and how they think about their teams and working together. And so, so this is how we kind of structure it. So within a server, you have 1 to many sites. And within that, you have these projects, which are really just like folders or organization, like ways to organize your work. And workbooks and dashboards are then published or saved to those projects. And it's at that project level that we assign permissions. I don't know why. My throat's really dry. It's not because I'm nervous or anything. Okay. So it's at that project level that we assign permissions, and we do that via like groups within Tableau. Now, there's a one-to-one relationship, for us anyways, for a Tableau group to an Active Directory group. And the reason that we do that is so that if users are added to a group in Active Directory, they automatically sync to Tableau Server so that my team doesn't have to spend our time doing that, right? That's really nice for me. And so any workbooks or data sources that are published to that project kind of follow those same permissions. Now, the pieces in pink are kind of like, I don't know if this is like an industry thing or if it's just like an artisan thing. But within Active Directory, we utilize this concept of roles and entitlements. So every person at the firm fills one to many roles. So for example, I'm an employee, I'm in the Milwaukee office, and I am an analytics developer. And so based on these roles, I'm entitled to certain things. So as an employee, I'm entitled to like, I don't know, let's say access to our enterprise site on Tableau Server. But as an analytics developer, I'm actually an admin on every site. So those two different roles grant me access to different things. And the real benefit there comes when I add another person to my team. I add them to that role, and they just have access to everything that they need to do their jobs. And so I find that just that concept is really valuable, and we've taken that on in our Tableau Server implementation. Sorry. OK, so I have some rules on how we permission our Tableau Server. I don't really like to have rules. I like to have guidelines, but there are 3 rules. And they're kind of listed at the bottom. And I know they're super great visualizations. So the first one is that all the permissions need to be locked to a project. And if they're not locked to a project, they're going to show up here. So it means that I need to take care of this enterprise project. Because whoever set it up, Chuck, did not lock it to the project. It's OK, I do it too, but his just happened to be the one that's the example for today. So and this is why the checks are so valuable, because you as a human are going in and updating this. Well, I guess you could probably programmatically do this stuff. We're not there yet, but humans are going in and doing this, so we like to build in some checks for that. So then permissions need to be granted via a group. So if permissions are granted to an individual, we want to change that. We want to build some sort of group so that those permissions are assigned to a group. If that person leaves or changes from that group to a different team, for example, we want those permissions to be set up accordingly and not to a single person. And then you'll see that we say group or this serve release management. So we actually have a deployment system that can take a workbook out of SVN or version control and publish it to production server. And so that service account that runs as also is granted access. So that's, I guess, a little bit of a breaking my own rules kind of thing. But I don't really think of that as an actual user. So that's how I sleep at night. And the third rule is that whenever we set up users on our server, we set up the minimum site role as a publisher. And the reason that we do that is because if I decide tomorrow to give you Tableau Desktop, I don't want to have to go into Tableau Server to change you from an interactor to a publisher so that you can then, share all the awesome dashboards you're making. So I just kind of by default set everybody up as a publisher. And then if you happen to have Tableau Desktop, yay, you can publish stuff. So I like to build ugly dashboards based on the Tableau Postgres database that lives behind it to check all of my fun little requirements that I put on the team. So, so this beautiful dashboard basically checks permissions, which I find actually really valuable. And we actually provide this to our data governance team as well so that they know who has access to what and what capabilities do they have. So when I was first starting out, kind of being an administrator on Tableau Server, I really I found it confusing, the flowchart or hierarchy that Tableau Server gives you on whether you inherit rights or you can grant or deny. I kind of found it confusing, so I just felt like if I assign permissions to a group at a project level and I specify whether they can or cannot have access to that capability, that would just be the easiest thing. So that's what this great visualization tells us. So I kind of have these standard permissions, which you can see on the top left. These are our standard permissions. So I turned off commenting because at the time it just wasn't highly used. And then I turned off like web editing, I think this is, and setting permissions. And then, yeah, setting permissions to the workbook and setting permissions to the data source. I turned all that stuff off because I'm going to control permissions. And then so down below, these are all of our sites and projects and whether it's denied or granted, those permissions. And so you can see we have like two projects that deviate. And so these are more of guidelines, right? So not every project has to follow the same permissions, so that's okay as long as we kind of document the reason why. So we have a wiki page where we, as a team, document any deviations from our standards. So the chart on the right is for our enterprise project permissions, and I kind of regret choosing the word enterprise, but basically, we wanted Tableau Server to be a place where users can create stuff and share stuff, right? Kind of like if anybody has SharePoint or something like that, where users are creating content and publishing it right to production. We wanted to keep our users, continue to give them that capability, but with some exceptions, right? So our executive summary or certain things for our compliance teams, we want to implement or force a change control mechanism for any of those specific workbooks or data sources. And so those are projects that we call enterprise projects. Again, I feel like at this time, if I could rename it, I probably would. But they have a different set of permissions. So users can't save to those projects. The only person that can save to those projects is that serve release management service account. And so that requires a whole different set of change management processes. It's pretty nerdy and awesome, I think. So let's say, one of the executives wants to change. They want to see 7-year performance on this dashboard now. So I can go through locally on my local machine. I'll make that change. If it looks good, I'll publish it to our test environment. I'll send a link to our, the manager to say, like, how does this look? They'll say, it looks great. Of course it does. And so then I'll create in Jira a change management ticket. And I'll list this object, right? Like, OK, this Tableau executive summary dashboard, I'm going to change it. I'll list the reason why. That manager has to approve that ticket. So does my peer, Chuck. I mean, we all remember Chuck, right, from that last dashboard. Chuck has to review it and approve it, and then so does my manager. And then once we're in a fun deployment window from like random hours, I can actually deploy my change to production using an Atlassian tool called Bamboo is how we've built it. And it all uses the Tableau API to take that workbook out of SVN or version control and then publish it to our production environment. So that's where that service account, the server release management account, is really important, being on those projects. Anyway. So those projects have different set of permissions. So then as we get into providing transparency into our governance, so now we have the security model set up. Our users are creating fantastic things and sharing them, and we have a lot of usage. Our data governance team wants to be able to kind of see who has access to what. So within a given site and project, these are the Active Directory groups. So we try to make it easy within Active Directory to have our support team or anybody who's adding or removing users from those groups to know exactly what it's tied to. So APP means application. Tableau is no surprise. It's the Tableau application. And then it's the data governance corporate events project, site and project. And so, again, it's kind of a one-to-one for the most part between an Active Directory group and a project. And I'm not going to show this capability, but I can click on this and it expands. It's a hierarchy. It expands to show you all the users who are actually within that group. So the data governance team or the compliance team or whoever I make this available to can actually see these are all the users who have access to this stuff in this project. Now, they really only care about these things, users that can connect to the data or view the data or the workbook, so I've kind of limited it to that. But there's all of these different capabilities. Can they export data? Can they view the underlying data? Can they share a customized report? All of these fun things our data governance team can come in and see. Now, I have removed the analytics team from this report because we're on every project, just by default. We want to be able to support those users, so our group is added to every project, and this list would be really boring if you just saw us everywhere. So, I make this joke a lot, but this one really bothers me, this one with the no spaces. It's very inconsistent. It's probably Chuck again. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I pick on Chuck. He's not here. That's why I pick on him. But no, he is fantastic. I'm sure it was somebody else. All right. So then kind of the governance team doesn't really care so much about job status. That's more of something that, for monitoring purposes, the analytics team is looking to support our users. Some of the reports that we've built have been like, I'm thoughtful enough to foresee that we might need this. And other things are more of like, I didn't realize I needed that. Let me build a dashboard to provide some insight to our team. And so this is kind of one of those second examples where if one of my business users publishes a dashboard to Tableau Server, and it's scheduled, like the extract is scheduled to run on a daily basis or something, if that extract fails, the owner of the object actually gets an email. The admin team has no idea that this is happening. And so then 3 weeks down the road, they're like, why is my data still from last month? I'm like, oh yeah, because it's been failing for the last month, so that's fun. So I built this workbook. Actually, I'm sorry, I didn't build this workbook. I stole it from Mark Jackson and then modified it to make it my own. So total credit to him. But yes, I have made modifications. So it's a 14-day look. And then we care about 3 different things: subscriptions, data source refreshes, and workbook refreshes, because if you don't publish your data source separately to the server, you can refresh the workbook itself. So those are 2 separate kind of refresh types. So what we can then see is, on 8.2, we had no issues, so everything's 100%. On some of these, there are issues. So I subscribe to this view, and I get it every night, so I can kind of know what's going on and be proactive in terms of supporting our users if things have failed. So I can, for example, say, okay, if I'm concerned about what this is, I can click on this in this Gantt chart below. I can actually see what workbook it is, when it started, when it failed, and why. And I think the why is important. I'll come back to that in a second, but I want to pick on myself for a change and not Chuck. So I published this bad boy up there, and it's looking for a file on my C drive, which, of course, Tableau Server is not going to have access to. So I can go in and fix that. Now, what's interesting here is, some complexity that I have failed to mention is that the analytics team, we are not admins on our server. So we have separate super secret credentials that are admins, but we are our normal credentials are not admins. And the reason we do that is so that the those enterprise reports I was telling you about, we don't want to, we shouldn't be able to change those without a change ticket. So we have the same permissions as everybody else. And if we do need any admin views, we log in with these super secret credentials. And yes, Chuck has those too. I feel bad. This was not part of my original plan, but it just seems to be. Feels right. And he's not here. That's really his fault. So these credentials, so this view, I guess, allows me, even without these super secret credentials, I can see the underlying error without having to log in with administrative credentials. And so actually, I don't know if anybody's done those brain dates that they had here this year. So I've done a few of them, and they're pretty awesome. And one of the ideas that came out of there was to actually make this information available to your business users who are creating reports. Maybe they care about like if something's failing and why it's failing. And so I plan on probably building them a dashboard like this where they can kind of see those reasons. So moving on. In addition to kind of knowing what job statuses are, it's also a good idea, at least I think probably, to take a look at some of the objects that you have on your server. So in this case, we can see 6 a.m. is like a busy time. And what are our long-running refreshes? This one takes 17 minutes on average. Maybe I want to go in and take a look at that. And so these are just some basic admin views that at least I feel have been valuable for our team. And so then in terms of our data sources and workbooks, some of them, obviously these two are really large. Like who needs that much data? Maybe it's like 300 columns and they're only using 30. That would be fun, right? So I can go in and this helps me identify some of those top offenders just to be a little bit more proactive in updating those. All right, so this one, I know, it's a fantastic dashboard. I'm aware. So this one, it actually looks really unassuming, but it's probably my favorite. So we have these unused workbooks and data sources. I'm hopeful that I'm not the only one out there with this problem, where people maybe like, I'm probably a huge offender too. You're like, oh, this is Brandy's test workbook, and then I never go and delete it, right? So you could possibly have unused objects on your server. So how do you resolve that issue, right? So first of all, I've built this fantastic dashboard showing me my unused workbooks and data sources. Luckily enough, there are no unused data sources. I was actually like, this is wrong. There's something wrong with this dashboard. How do I not have any unused data sources? It's true. They're all being used, so that's great. But unused, so for us, unused means, let's say, anything that hasn't been used in the last 6 months. Okay, that's my threshold. So I bring in any workbooks that haven't been used in the last 6 months. So now I can see, like, okay, some of these are like in archive. Maybe I need to talk to the compliance team about like, are you archiving this stuff? Like maybe we can like take it off server if you really need it. I don't know. But some of these, so what I can do, and this is what I think is really cool, is I can actually click on this, say, okay, I want to send this person an email letting them know that they have this object out there that's unused, and maybe they should like take a look at it. And so what I've built in Tableau is actually, I think this is really nerdy and cool, a pre-canned email that has the owner's information. Like in the subject, it tells them that it's an unused workbook and what the ID of the workbook is. It actually doesn't mean anything to the user. It'll be a fun surprise at the end on what that is. But then, this canned email that says, like, you're the owner of this workbook, and it hasn't been used since 2017. Fun. And we're going to remove it. Okay? So what I think is pretty cool, at least within our organization, we use Jira. And so I will BCC this like special email address. And by doing that, it creates a ticket with all of this information in Jira for our team. And this ID here actually links back up with this object here. It's the same ID. And so then what I can do is like in a month from now, or let's say I come back and I send the email, and tomorrow I kind of come and take a look at this dashboard. This line is going to be blue, much like these are, right? So I've sent emails already for these 3. So this is saying, okay, this object is old. It's older than 6 months. You've notified the person, but as you can see within the status, it says it's not within that removal window yet. So that ticket is not a month old yet. As soon as it's a month old, it'll be a different color, letting me know I can actually go and remove that workbook now. So I think that's kind of cool and nerdy. So that brings me to my kind of action items slide. I am a huge fan of kind of like takeaways. So I've kind of already obviously these are kind of the 3 pillars of our analytics program. So we have our training where we really make sure we're working with those business users to develop their skills in Tableau and make sure that they have everything that they need to create awesome content. I really am a fan of like Tableau's starter kits. So they actually used to just have like all these free online videos for on-demand training, and they're awesome. But they have admin stuff and like developer stuff, people on the business side. And the starter kits are really awesome because it's like, if you want to just get started with Tableau, like check out this set of videos. So it's more curated. So I'm a fan of those. And then at the beginning of the year, my team, we sat down and kind of actually developed at the beginning of the year a whole list of workshop ideas for the rest of the year. And so I kind of posted some of those on my website, but I think I don't know if the Tableau folks have them, but definitely on my website, there's a PDF there. In terms of security, I think our model, first of all, like it just developed organically over time. However, the business has kind of thought about how they want to organize their team and their work. We definitely make use of that Active Directory integration. I think that that's huge because now the adding and removing individual users is not on like my team's like plate. We can utilize the resources of our help desk team. And so I spoke about utilizing like individual capabilities and kind of knowing exactly what those are. There's so much information out online, and so I found this particular link to be really helpful in understanding what those capabilities are. And then I kind of put down my rules and guidelines in a PDF as well. And then finally, with governance, I love to use Tableau to make my life easier. So if you have rules, or like for us, if we have rules that we kind of want to track, I always try to build a Tableau dashboard to monitor those. And I'm actually a huge fan of building workbooks where it like should be blank, and only if something's populated do I actually have to take action. I find that that really is valuable and makes for really boring dashboards. So that's cool. And then actually within Tableau Server, right, if you have a blank, you can subscribe to a view, and if it's blank, it won't send anything to you. So it'll only send you something, for example, if there's failures on your server, you can have a view that says, okay, show me the failures for the day, and if it's blank, it won't send me anything, but if it is populated, then I'll make check to it. I'm just kidding. I do it too, but I pick on Chuck a lot, I think. Okay, so, and then providing that transparency. Utilizing that Postgres database, I have found to be really valuable in just providing transparency to our compliance teams or our data governance teams, and even other people within IT or business users who are creating their own stuff, and they want to know who's using my dashboard and when are they using it and how are they using it, right? Are they using it at mobile, or are they using it at their desks, or what? So all that stuff is really helpful. And then all of the dashboards that I've shown today are available in a pre-built workbook that's on my website. It's built in 10.5, and if you download it and open it up, you'll be prompted to enter the credentials for your Tableau Server environment, and then all of the kind of like stuff that I've shown should populate with your data. And then if anybody does use that Postgres database behind Tableau Server, this data dictionary down here is extremely helpful in understanding all the different tables, how they relate, what information is there. And then, of course, I would love to hear about any suggestions that people might have for additional views in that workbook if you're struggling with something. So one of my brain dates earlier, actually, she's looking at load times on different, like the same view, but like all the different instances that it's loaded, like what are those like load times? And I feel like that's just an awesome, another awesome way to use that Postgres database. Thank you very much. So if anybody has questions, I'm happy to take some questions. Yeah.
So you're driving the group through Active Directories. So
Yeah.
for any given project, you have multiple role-based Active Directory groups, like publishers, or you only driving it that way?
Yeah, so we don't do, we only, so on the Tableau Server side, we don't have like viewers or like interactors only. We set up everybody as a publisher. And then the roles, like the roles and entitlements concept, you can have multiple roles within an entitlement. And it's that entitlement that really is the Active Directory group. And so that is what is like the entitlements that you saw, like that APP, like application Tableau, like data governance. That's basically the entitlement that exists in Active Directory.
So anyone with a desktop application can publish?
Yes.
And then anyone can structure the content within the project? Or do you have a project owner that can?
So we don't do project owners or site admins. We haven't had a need for that yet. But if you had Tableau Desktop, for example, unless you also are in an Active Directory group or entitlement that grants you access to the project, you couldn't publish there anyways. Yeah. Hopefully that answers your question. Yeah? All right. Yes?
Since you want everything to projects, what's usually the exception of, okay, so I'm in compliance, but then somebody says, oh, but somebody in HR really needs to see that document?
Yeah, that's something that we are starting to deal with more and more, absolutely, like cross-department collaboration. And I don't have a perfect solution for that yet. An example might be to have like a separate project, maybe you still keep it in compliance if they're doing the development, and you add HR to the entitlement so that they can see that project. But yeah, that one's definitely a difficult one. And I'd love to know if somebody has an answer to that, like something that they've done there. Do you have?
Our tool's not Tableau, but I manage a tool that we have similar thing where we use in Active Directory. And so what I've set up is a group for our department, a group for two groups for other departments that we collaborate with, where the full department can see our stuff.
Mhm.
And then a third one where it's basically miscellaneous. And anybody that's called something like outside of our department details.
Yeah.
And then anybody, and then you move on.
Yeah, would that be like a separate site then?
Separate Active Directory.
Got it.
And so it's managed at that level.
Yeah.
So then the tool stays in place with no domain.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, I think we've created recently like an enterprise site where we have like more enterprise-wide reporting or collaboration. Yeah.
We have one site, the project folder called cross-functional, so anyone that has you or same rights with the other folders have that right cross-functional.
Yeah. That's a good idea too. Yes.
We utilize
Sub-projects? Yeah.
We'll have like a functional area projects that have HR, for example, and if they're collaborating with another department, we have a separate community secure type project where we can grant permissions for multiple areas that we have.
Gotcha. Cool.
I do have another question.
Yeah.
Do you have any like table of content type workbook so your end users know what content is available throughout the project so they might need access to that?
No, but that's a fantastic idea. Yeah, I think, yeah, no, we don't currently have that, but that's a really good idea. Yeah.
I just walked out of one for Buffalo, University of Buffalo.
To come here?
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah, it was a long haul, but the one thing that you mentioned about table of contents, I need to lean on, so when Tableau sends out the information, I have it on the table of contents.
Yeah. Awesome. Any other questions? Yeah.
I got a comment. A lot of your administrative views, we do similar things with Postgres,
Mhm.
and we also have two logins, a low level and a high level sort of login. So most of those reports will publish out there, and we'll restrict them based on who has access to a specific site, so they're user filtered by what you can access.
Yeah, that's a great
And
idea.
then for those administrative users, there's just, or the server admins, there's just a logic in there that says, hey, if you also have a server admin, you get to view everything. So there's one published workbook.
Yeah.
Server admins see everything, and then if you're part of a site, you see those sites.
Got it.
Makes it
That,
really convenient.
yeah, no, absolutely. That's a really good idea. Any other questions? Oh, yeah.
So if you have somebody in one of those business groups creating a dashboard and wants to go enterprise-wide now, do you have a process for that, or does that typically happen?
I don't know if that's happened yet, but I could absolutely see that happening. Like if something becomes like extremely valuable and we think it would have, impact across the firm. I I mean, I think on a one-off basis, it's pretty easy to just manually kind of move it over. We do utilize, Interworks has like enterprise deployment tool that can move those objects around. But on a one-off basis, it's just as easy to manually do it, but we haven't had that need yet. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Yeah, to like move stuff between sites. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I feel like I'm not actually able to answer anybody's questions. We haven't experienced that yet either. So no, but like I said, like the Interworks tools, I haven't heard of Tab Migrate, but the Interworks tool, I think like basically hacks the XML and like publishes, like pulls it down and then like publishes it up to whatever other site you want. But you need to have like admin access to like both, to do the, or at least access the capability to do both of those things. It runs as your credentials. Okay, sure. Got it. Yeah, no, that's smart. I think, like I said, we use Bamboo to like pull that object out of version control and publish it, but I guess I'm not really sure the process that goes through exactly, but we use the Tableau API for that. Yeah.
Are your business users responsible for all the modeling and access to that, all control that Active Directory layer?
When you say modeling, do you mean like data modeling?
Right.
Yeah.
That part of the Tableau development, or are they partnering with IT?
Yeah, typically our business users don't have direct access to the database. So they really do the front-end development, and if they have data sources, usually my team actually handles like creating all of that data content for them. Yeah, unless it's like an Excel file or something of that nature. Yeah.
So your team is doing the modeling in Tableau and publishing those?
Exactly. Yep.